call the policy committee meeting to order at 5:48. As the chair, I'm seeking a motion to adopt the agenda, but I'm also asking for an amendment.
So move.
Second. Well, you gotta.
That item is already on the agenda.
Perfect. Okay, good. So then, so moved without an amendment. I second. Director Abram.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 2-0. All right. I know that Director Abram coming in. This is relatively relevant. If you hadn't had a chance to look at the minutes from May 5th, give you a chance to do so. It's in the email in which the Zoom call for this meeting was put in.
Okay, give me just one second. All right.
Okay. All right. Seeking a motion for the approval of the draft minutes of May 5th, 2020.
So move.
So second. Without further discussion, Director Abram.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 2-0. Moving on to discussion items. Now, 4.1. Now, being the fact that this is already on the agenda and Dr. Skinner just explained it in entirety, do you feel, if you feel that there are other inquiries to be made, you can make them before or after a motion is made regarding this this policy?
No, I think you explained it pretty clear. This is something I personally never heard of, so I really like it.
I mean, I can go through it a little bit more thoroughly. I thought we were really more having a conversation than really presenting it per se.
But you did a good job of giving that conversation. I just want to make sure that that Director Abrams had enough foresight to make a decision. I didn't want him to feel kind of like there was information he was missing, or if you Director Abrams, if you'd like for him to go more in depth, I'm pretty sure Dr. Skinner will comply.
I think I caught pretty much the whole thing. If you want to just hit the high points one more time, just to be sure, then I'll ask a question if I missed one of those, but you did a really good job explaining it.
All right. Well, this policy GCBDA, professional staff short-term leaves, basically stipulates that unused vacation doesn't accrue. Basically, you lose it at the end of the year. There is one exception to that, and that is you can roll 5 days over with the superintendent's permission into the month of July, but it has to be used in July. And what happens a lot of times, be honest, I've never used my vacation days. I've lost vacation days every year except for 2, and that's due to some personal reasons. But I still have rolled over 5 days. While I roll over 5 days, the next thing you know, I have another 20 days. I can't use 25 days in a year. And to be honest, even when you have 20, it's still very difficult to use when we have so many, just everyday critical and non-critical occurrences that come up in education. A lot of times, other employees have difficulty using them. So that's part of it. And this really affects, again, only 12-month employees, because 12-month employees are the only employees that earn vacation. And, this really affects buildings and grounds, probably more so than any other department, but it also affects technology. Anybody that's FLSA exempt, that basically, that anytime they go beyond their 40 hours, we have to give them either compensation in money or time, and we typically do comp time. And what happens is they will build time, the employee will build time, and let's say, for instance, we have a lot of bad weather that year. They have, let's say, for instance, 7 snow days. Well, 7 snow days, he came in every day on those days and worked. So not only are they not at home taking vacation on those days or being off like everybody else, they're at work. So now they have 20 vacation days and 7 comp days. So now they've got 27 days they need to take before the end of the school year. And so, what I'm proposing is that, this year and this year alone, because this is current policy, that we do allow for 5 years to be rolled over into July with superintendent's or interim superintendent's permission at this point. But any days not used as far as vacation, when June 30th rolls around to July 1st, those vacation days convert into leave days, which can be accumulated. And I will tell you, in policy, it talks about you can only accumulate 150 days. However, we have a collective bargaining agreement with the union that supersedes that and says that we can actually accumulate more than that. With that being said, it's in the employee's best interest, especially if they're going to stay in the district, to build up as much leave time as possible, because they do get some type of compensation when they leave. If they're in the district for over 5 years, or 5 years at least, when they leave, they get 25% of sub pay. And if they stay in the district for 10 years, they get 50%, and 15 years, 75%. And if they stay in the district for 20 years, they get 100% of sub pay. And so that is kind of an incentive for an employee not to take those vacation days, because a lot of times people do have the mindset, I'm going to take those vacation days because I'm not going to lose them. I'm not going to just lose days. I'll find something to do. I'm just going to take off, because they don't want to lose days. And to be honest, I'm not saying I agree with them, but I do understand that. And so, what this will do, I think, will encourage employees not to feel the need to take those vacation days. And even though it's sub pay and it's a percentage of sub pay, it's better than nothing. And to be honest, it can add up. I mean, it can add up, and it's not going to be a huge cost to the district, but it will be some cost, because to be honest, if you have an employee, let's say $100 a day, and it's basically 10 days, if they save up after 5 years, I mean, that's $250. So it does cost a little bit. The more days that the employee has saved when they leave, and the longer, of course, they've been in the district. But again, it's an incentive, because I have known employees that have been in the district literally for 15 years that have not accumulated any days. And then I know some that have accumulated, to be honest, over 100. So it is an incentive. I think, that, to be honest, there is pros and cons. The con is it does cost a little bit of money. I think the pros of having people not feel the need to take vacation, the pros of rewarding them for staying a little longer and giving them something, I think outweighs the cons. So I would just like to see if we can maybe make this change to policy starting this year, because again, if we don't make it this year, come July 1st, everybody that has vacation days unused will lose them.
So they can only, I guess, cash out after the 5 years kind of vesting period?
You don't get it. It's when you leave the district. So when you leave the district, if you've been in the district over 5 years, depending upon 5 to 20 years, you get that % of sub pay for your accrued leave days.
So you can't just say, like, what's the end of the year, just cash me out my days. Okay.
No, you can't. And to be honest, if they stay in the district for only 4 years and they leave, and even if they have, 20 accrued days, they get nothing, because they haven't been in the district 5 years.
Gotcha.
And so after 5 years, it's not a way that they can just cash in and say cash these out. The only way that they would ever get paid for those is when they actually leave the district.
After at least 5 years of service.
After 5 years, you get 25% of sub pay. But if you, let's say, stayed in the district 10 days or 10 years, you would get 50% of sub pay. But again, even if you left after 9 years, you would get 25% of sub pay. It changes every 5 year increment.
Right. I think it's a great way to incentivize.
Okay, yeah, I would agree.
Dr. Skinner, let me ask a question. You're talking about the leave in terms of rolling it to accumulate until you leave the district. What about the employee that, they accumulate 10 days that they roll over to the next year and then request to take 30 days in that particular year?
I mean, well, the bottom line is, if they have 30 days, I mean, they get to take 30 days. If they only have 20 days, they get docked for 10 days still. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, there is that, you know, because again, some people go on FMLA and they're out 12 weeks. And if they have leave days built up, they can use them. But a lot of times people go on FMLA and they have to take several days without pay because they don't have that leave accrued.
Okay.
I mean, I just think, you know, again, that's kind of thing when you look at a person, you know, when you start accruing all that time, it's not so you can just take it off in one year. But again, let's say you do have a surgery, you know, and you have to be out for 2 or 3 weeks, you know, that would help. And again, you know, you're awarded 12 leave days and 20 vacation days as a 12-month employee. And to be honest, you know, there should be some type of reward, I feel, if you don't use your leave days and you don't use all your vacation days. They should roll over, and eventually, again, you will be rewarded for staying with the district and not using all your days, even if it's just a small amount of, you know, what you should be compensated at a full rate. Because again, it is only sub rate. And to be honest, you know, we know that subs do not make as much as teachers or employees. They don't get, you know, at the same rate.
This policy applies top to bottom, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
Okay. I mean, because I know that I think in 2014 we had an issue changing from carpenter to.
Well, I will tell you this: the only exception to this is the superintendent, because there's an exception in their contract.
Okay. Which yeah. Okay. Director Abrams, I mean, if there's no further information needed, would you? I'd like to request the motion.
Is it appropriate for me to ask a question about what was submitted as well?
No, absolutely. You can ask a question.
So I think Dr. Skinner said the first time he was talking to you, well, being one of those 12-month employee that never uses, you know, I'm going. I mean, I've accrued whatever you can. I rolled over 5, still didn't use those 5, so I just lost them. But I think, Doc, you said that if this, because I can't scroll and revisit, did you say that the 12-month employee that could roll 5 over to July, just in case?
That's only this year. After this year, that option would go away with my proposal.
Okay, maybe my question is why does that go away as an option?
I think, to be honest, again, you get 20 days vacation. I think that's enough for one. And be honest, like I said, most people get in that routine. If you roll over 5, you're always rolling over 5 because you don't use 25 days in a year.
That's what I showed that.
Not to mention the hassle for our business department to keep track of who's rolling how many and what's converting over into leave.
I'm satisfied.
And as I understand your proposal, Dr. Skinner, you wouldn't need to have the ability to roll them over 5 over to July because you're rolling all of them over to July. You're
well, but you don't roll them over as vacation. They convert into leave days.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Okay. I think that, yeah.
Okay.
Good question, Carla, because I was, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you really, you know, it's not like the next year you have, if you roll over 10 days, you don't have 30 days vacation. You have an additional 10 leave days, and you still have only 20 days vacation for the next year.
I see.
Does the policy explicitly say the difference between like a leave day and a vacation day or a sick day?
Well, I mean, we accrue, again, we are you know, given 20 vacation days and 12 leave days, 1 leave day for every day of the month that's accrued, and 20 vacation days. And really, to be honest, you know, being a 12-month employee, the only ones that have those vacation days, the true thing that really comes with a vacation day is you can use a vacation day next to a holiday. If you take a leave day next to a holiday, it's a dock day. So only 12-month employees, because they do work 12 months, are given that option. But that's really the only major advantage of a vacation day over a leave day.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the difference between the two and how there's certain stipulations as you just explained. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you get to use them pretty much simultaneous, except for what I just mentioned.
Yes, sir.
So if would be, like I said, I would actually like it if this could go to consent item, for the board meeting.
So I was thinking that's what you were going to want to do, Dr. Skinner. I think it needs to go to full, just because of board policy on policy review. It's going to need to go before the full board for consideration. Normally, the policy review requires a first read and second read of policy revisions. This, you guys can move it to the full board for consideration, and with a recommendation that it be considered after only one review. You have the option in your board policy to allow you to be able to do that. You just need to state in your motion why you're doing that. And it's normally done for something that's an emergency or something that's, necessary. And I would think this would qualify as such because the time would be lost if it doesn't get acted on at next month's meeting. So you'll want to move it to the full board for consideration with a recommendation that the board act on it after a first read. And so that's going to require Ms. Payton making sure that she gets out as soon as possible Dr. Skinner's memo along with the policy, probably in red lines, so that the board can see what the change is, so that they can make a decision to act on it quickly.
I will, again, I have the policy attached, to it. And again, I don't have anything in red because I just took it straight from that. The only thing I want to point out is right here on this page where it talks about the maximum accrue of 150 days. That is superseded by a CBA with the NEA.
Does that CBA apply to 12-month employees?
I believe it does. I mean, we have been giving it for other 12-month employees. Yes.
Okay.
I can think of one right now that is resigning at the end of this year that applies for.
Can I make a request? So before Donna sends it off, Dr. Skinner, I know you've already spent a lot of time on this, but just in the task of being able to highlight some of those differences that you were requesting, I want to trust that my board has a thorough understanding, and I know that if there's questions, I want to be able to kind of get to those questions while we're in that discussion, instead of having to postpone as we're talking about urgency.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think, your memo, Dr. Skinner, with the policy, and if there's any way to, do something that draws attention to the changes, the more you can make that clear.
The more we can save.
Right.
Okay.
The more you can make that clear to the board so that there isn't a question so that they have ample time to review it, the more likely they are to pass on it without the need for a second read.
Let me see something real quick while we're talking. I want to see something. I think I should be able to figure out a way to go into the PDF and highlight some stuff.
I mean, if
I'll have to basically, it'll be a new document to add to this. I can't, just take this one down, but I should be able to figure a way to do it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm sorry. It would just be more efficient on the board's behalf of being able to review this and being able to make not so much as a snap judgment, but more along the lines of a more thorough judgment, because we tend to be very analytical about these things. And I wanted to just be able to be assertive and direct, so we can get this done as it as I agree that this change to this policy is emergent and needed.
Okay, yeah, I'll go through and do like, right here for because it doesn't say 25, it says 1/4 versus 25%,
Right.
1/2 versus 50. I'll highlight some of the things that I feel pertinent, to make sure everybody notices right away.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for looking at this as well. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm gonna go back to Carla before I go back to Mr. Abram. Mr. Abram, do you got that motion down?
Mr. Abram, you're on mute.
I have to make that motion. I thought it was for this is for today?
Right, so
You have to
your
make a motion for it to
motion,
go.
yeah, your motion is that you want to move this item to the full board for consideration with
the
the
recommendation?
that you act after one read.
Okay. What Ms. Johnson just said.
That works.
I would like to make a motion that we move this policy to the full board with the recommendation that we act after the first reading.
Very good.
Second. Do you feel like you really have any more to discuss, Director Abram?
I don't.
Okay, great. Me either. So let's so I'll call it to a vote. Director Abram.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 2-0. Moving next on the discussion list is policy BDA.
Okay, why isn't it? I'm clicking on it. I don't know why it's not coming up.
So I actually tried that as well, and it didn't come up as far as the policy itself. So I went ahead and pulled it up while we were talking earlier.
You want me to unshare my screen? I can stop and you can start.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. So let's see. All right, share screen. Let's see. There we go. All right. Everybody see?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Disregard everything else. I do a lot of things. Let's see. So I believe this discussion item was put on the agenda based on the fact that we were reviewing the part about I'm going to actually try to scroll down here. Electronic participation. Would that be correct, Donna? Not Donna, Carla, excuse me.
I wasn't sure why this was added to the agenda. I don't recall if you and I had a conversation about it. I apologize. I don't recall.
No, it's not. I think Donna, you added this to the agenda, did you not?
Yes, we had discussed, I mentioned it to you. We were talking about things for the agenda, and
That's what I thought.
Director Brooks brought this up at our last meeting, his concern that we review this policy.
So it wasn't the policy that needed to be reviewed. It was the guidelines that for the committees that were under the policy. It was brought up in the last board meeting that I had asked that board members were able to view 2018 committee guidelines, which essentially is underneath this policy. And being the fact that I'm already sharing my screen, I might as well find it.
And Director Chair Watry, that is true. But Director Brooks also wanted us to look at the time. His specific request was that we look at the amount of time that was given for directors to speak during a meeting.
Oh, yeah,
those guidelines were not being followed.
I see. So I guess the purpose of this meeting is to talk about, or this topic on this meeting is to just to address the aspect that how board members are adhering to policy.
Correct.
The issue. The smaller issue, the fact that board members So, and I'm just going to read this part because it says time limits. And I think, yeah, I believe that every board member should have, there's a part in here that speaks about board members having 2 minutes.
It's in the top part. You just passed it in the top part. 2 minutes for the first time and 1 minute for the second.
Yes.
It was right where it's like the last sentence in that first paragraph on the time limit.
So I guess the question I would have to the committee is, do you feel that this time is enough time for board members to give their responses, being the fact that this tends to be a repetitive issue that consistently comes up with board members?
I think these rules have been established for a long time. There's nothing new. People knew about them. If you were prepared for meetings, then they would have their arguments or their rebuttals prepared. It's not meant for us to be there going back and forth all night as a debate. Simply have discussion. Maybe in a debate setting, we could have like the official debate. I think there's enough time. I think we need to have maybe a stronger enforcement from a sergeant at arms position. I'm not sure if that's something that we need to establish or if the board president takes over that responsibility. I think people are just getting a little, I don't know the right word, audacious, just a little puffed up, and they kind of just keep going, and nobody's there to stop them. I think that time is appropriate.
And I do believe that Sergeant at Arms could be in place, but I also believe that it is also the responsibility, as it states here, that the board president shall also halt discussion if board has agreed to the time limitations for discussion of an item and that time is expired. Now that would also mean individual time limits in which board members have to respond. So it looks like here, like Donna, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Carla, would your interpretation be the same?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I'm going to limit the time each member must meet.
And then, as I'm just now reading, that last one says, no discussion related to one agenda item shall exceed 20 minutes in the total aggregate. I think we spend way more than 20 minutes on individual items. So if we're giving 2 minutes for your first time, a minute for your second response, the entire discussion shouldn't take over 20 minutes, according to this policy.
Now, go ahead, Carla.
So, I mean, certainly, and this rule says it, but in general, Robert's rules, you can suspend procedural rules, if there's a reason why you want to do that. I mean, the rule is in here. You all can comply with it. Generally speaking, I mean, procedural rules are designed to help ensure that the meeting runs smoothly. And so it's not designed to limit conversation or dialogue on a particular issue if there's a need to have dialogue. So I would encourage you not to lean on this too heavily. I mean, if there's a reason why you guys need to have more dialogue on a particular issue, I would encourage you to have the dialogue. This is designed if things start getting out of hand and people are doing a whole bunch of back and forth and you're not moving an agenda item and you're not moving through your agenda, then certainly this rule is in place. You can enforce it or suspend it with a vote of the members. So you can, when you have an item that is going to be controversial and that's going to get out of hand, you can move to enforce the time limits in this board policy. And then, at that point, Ms. Payton would be keeping track of time for each member. But I can tell you that can be difficult and frustrating to try and comply with when an issue is a hot issue. So you just want to be careful with that. It's there, but it clearly says it in there that you all can limit it. And I know just in general, all procedural rules in Robert's rules are designed to be suspended and applied at the will of the body.
Okay. because one of the things that I do realize is that there Robert's rules also allows the time for time to be extended, um,
Correct.
so that but it would have to come to the full vote of the board, in which um, just ensuring that the board president understands that they have the ability to request a motion for an extension of time on a topic, uh, or a board member has the once their time is exceeded, they can request from the full board an additional time frame in which to be able to say what they need to say. And I think that that will allow us to be able to move more smoothly without taking away from the conversation, because I do feel like the conversation is very warranted. And a lot of the conversations that we've had, even including the conversation which uh, Director Brooks was referring to, required much discussion. The one thing that I do want to also adhere to what I believe the the Director Brooks was leading to, was the availability to not allow the conversation or the dialogue to take over and become um, heated or emotionally compromised. Um,
Correct.
so I think that by just simply by discussion, the as chair, I can present this to the board as far as what we had discussed, and as far as the expectations or lack of, not necessarily limitations, but rather the fact that this is what was discussed. This was what was made available to the committee, and we are making this information available to the board so that they can adhere and act in kind.
And just as a suggestion for whatever it's worth, Director Watchery, I'm going to recommend, and I think that I imagine Mr. Obing is going to recommend a board retreat to occur pretty soon following, his coming on board, and you've got, your new directors that are going to come on. So this would be an ideal thing to have conversation around at a board retreat. Um, it just lends itself well to presenting and discussing how you all want to handle this in that setting, in a way that trying to present it at a board meeting, it may just get lost.
Agreed.
So just a suggestion for what it's worth.
Okay. Um, so what I would do is I would just chalk this up as discussion, unless Director Abram, you feel like any motion or needs to be made as far as recommendations made surrounding this policy.
No, I see none. Ms. Johnson explained it pretty well. I don't think any action needs to be taken. Just like you said, just a discussion and possible board retreat.
Okay. 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 With that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And I'm going to look at the agenda as far as discussion. Moving on to item 5.1, items to review for the full board. There were none presented by the full board, and I actually would like to take this time to speak on the guidelines in which in 2018 committee guidelines were set that all issues, including the issues that were brought here as discussion items to this board, are supposed to be first brought to the board as a whole and voted on to be sent into committee. I want to ensure that we adhere to those guidelines until nothing's changed, until the board decides different. So one of the issues in which what will be coming in the following year has to do with policy review, in which this committee will be bringing to the full board, if this policy committee has the same chair, we'll be bringing each individual policy letter. I believe it goes from A through K, but we will give time for policy committee members to review those policies, as we've noticed that a lot of the policies have been outdated and have gone through several administrations. and may be outdated. So we want to be able to review our own policies to be able to ensure that we are competent in what policies are needed for our district at this time. So that being said, if there's nothing else to add, Director Abram, our future meeting date.
And I would like to go over those future meeting dates, please.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
The next upcoming meeting is June 4th at 5 o'clock, the Facilities Committee meeting. On June 8th at 5 p.m., there will be an Educational Accountability Committee meeting. On June 9th at 5:30 p.m., there will be a Finance Committee meeting. And on June 11th, beginning at 6:30, we will begin with our regular session board meeting and conclude with our board reorganizational meeting.
All right. All right. So at this time, moving on to the last item, which is adjournment. I would like to, the time is now 6:23, and I hereby call this meeting to adjourn.
Awesome, well done. Good working with you all. Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for giving your input in those questions. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you for all who attended. See you soon.
All right, thank you.
you.
Mr. Barclay.